Hello people, the weekly Wednesday live time. I am Juha Ruokangas, your humble servant on a mission from the gods of fretted instruments. Now, I have a feeling one of the greatest innovators of the electric guitar as we know it, just might be peeking down at us from the skies. At least I'm hoping, I'm fantasizing so. A few quick snapshots from the past to wind us to the right mood. So first off, let's rewind to year 2009. I'm going to show you a picture. That's me playing pool. Now the question is, where am I playing pool at? Let me show you another picture, a snapshot I took outside that bar. There you go. This joint, not a very fancy one, it used to be located at 500 South Raymond Avenue, Fullerton, California. Now, some of you might already guess where this is going, because we're going to next jump exactly 50 years back in time, all the way back into the year 1959. The same building, the same address, 500 South Raymond Avenue, Fullerton, California. The first Fender factory, ladies and gentlemen, the same address. So I'm going to show you another photo from the inside. Yeah. So now, the legend goes. Don't ask me if it's correct or not, but the legend goes that the pool table I showed you at Jimmy's Bar and Grill was located at the exact same spot where Leo Fender's workbench used to be back in the 50s. So imagine my wife Emma and I playing pool where Leo used to be tinkering with, one of these babies. Having these like he used to do, having these on. So, yeah. Had to show you that because cool. So back to reality from the memory lane. Who would have known at the time, 1959, how absolutely powerful impact, these instruments would have in the coming decades. Shaping the pop culture revolution, the blues, the rock music as we know it. Oh man, such a rich legacy. And for I would claim that for all of us luthiers making electric guitars in the modern age, in one way or the other, we're standing on the shoulders of those early pioneers. Fender, Gibson, and other early ones. Paul Bixby. There's a great book about Paul Bixby. If you haven't seen the book, you should get that book. Explaining about the continuum that's been going on. And the whole arch of evolution from the 40s to this day. So maybe we'll do another episode one day about the history of electric guitar. And let me know in the comments below if that's something of interest to you guys. But okay, back to this day, of which I am very happy about, as I have the honor to welcome one of the modern day innovators at Fender Musical Instruments to my broadcast. So without further ado, welcome yet another god of fretted instruments, the chief engineer of Fender Guitars, research development wizard, Tim Shaw. Hey.
Good afternoon. How are you, man?
A mighty,
Great to be here.
a mighty welcome speech, eh?
It was awesome. It was awesome. And you've inspired me, so perhaps we should do the whole thing.
Yeah,
like
let's
this.
do that. Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah, exactly.
There we are.
Yeah, great, cool. Now, before I forget, I have received messages from two persons asking me to forward their regards to you, both food related for whatever reason. The first one from my former business partner Mika Koskinen, who was with me in Nashville when we visited you guys there. And he says the pulled pork you treated us with at Nashville downtown, I think you paid it with Fender credit card. I think so. But that was the best one he has ever eaten. So there goes the first. Yeah.
Probably Jack's Barbecue, and yeah, it's right up there.
So that's where we went. And another one, Mats Nurmark from Sweden asks, Tim, have you ever eaten an expensive meal in Gothenburg?
The most expensive meal I ever paid for at that point in my life was in Gothenburg with Mats. Yeah. This is 1992. It was $263, and I thought, I'm going to die. I'm going to get back. They're never going to reimburse me for this thing.
Welcome to Scandinavia.
Yeah, it was dinner for three. Yeah. Exactly. Welcome to Scandinavia. But that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for that.
Yeah. I think the only place where you could eat more expensive would be Norway. Yeah. Norway could be.
It's right up there. You're right.
Yeah. So anyway, now.
Yeah, I mean, actually.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, basically, you've never tried to do anything in Tokyo on your money either, have you?
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. That's that goes to the same ballpark, sure. So now, back to our topic. So now, a week ago, I promised the viewers that I would tell the story how our paths, yours and mine, crossed about 15 years ago. But I also mentioned that our relationship was highly confidential, top secret at that time. And, I could sense a bit of disbelief from some viewers, taking my chit chat as a kind of a joke. But isn't that correct? We did a non-disclosure agreement and all. Isn't that right?
We did. We absolutely did. We could reveal nothing of what we had discussed.
Yeah.
I could probably have revealed your existence, but that was it.
Yeah. So that's right. So I think, okay, we're gonna talk about that a little bit, but why don't we disclose this secret, this dark secret at the end of the broadcast? Let's build up a bit of tension in the meanwhile and go back to that in the end. First thing, I want to know, Tim, how did you get involved in all this? Guitars, like playing guitar, making guitars, this whole crazy madness.
Well, I started playing guitar in 1963. I'm very old. So I got my first acoustic guitar in 1963, along with a Nick Monloff chord wheel, which was like our little rotary coil chart or chord chart for guitars, and a really cheap steel string guitar. About a year later, I learned to play bass, because this is British invasion time. And I quickly realized that there were going to be way too many guitar players. And if I wanted to do anything, I was going to be a bass player. So I got my first bass. And a friend of my mom's at work's brother brought his Sunburst Jazzmaster and his Brown Princeton to my house and started teaching me surf music.
Yeah.
So the first thing I was playing as a bass player was like The Ventures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I played in a bunch of bands, both as a bass player and as an acoustic guitar player. Continued that through college. Went to a college in Western Michigan called Kalamazoo College, where I was a drama major. And there's a longer story than I'm going to tell you here as to why I was that. But I started hanging out at a music store in town, and ended up meeting the repairman there. Kind of liked it. Managed to finagle my senior independent thesis project in college as an entry-level guitar repairman. That turned into a repair shop, turned into a little guitar factory, which turned into Sunrise Guitars. And that place was a mile and a half from Gibson in Kalamazoo. Bill Lawrence would hang out in the store on weekends. He was consulting for Gibson. Bill would hang out in the shop, taught me to wind, taught me to rewire, just started me off on that whole thing. We had this little guitar factory, ended up going broke. I moved to California for a few years. One of the guys I'd worked with ended up getting a job in R&D at Gibson. I got hired in R&D at Gibson at the end of 1978.
Right.
I worked at Gibson in R&D as a model maker. I later ran the pickup department. Right. And these were women who did wind the PPFs. They were high seniority people by then. So I ended up running electronics for Gibson, working in R&D, building instruments for artists. So, I worked on the Howard Roberts Fusion. We worked on the Les Pauls when we kind of brought them back to the old spec. All the Chet Atkins stuff, just B.B. King's guitars, lots of really cool stuff.
Yeah.
When that closed in '84, I moved down here to Nashville. Continued at Gibson until '92. 3 years between Gibson and Fender. I started at Fender in the winter of '96, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah. Yes, and so the path as well, because you're known as a pickup specialist for one particular field of expertise. So Bill Lawrence was your first teacher in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's very interesting.
And the coil winder that sits a meter and a half to my right is based on the coil winder that Bill carried around in the trunk of his Cadillac.
Right. Okay.
So it's
that's cool.
It's really low technology.
Yeah. But that's cool tidbits of that people love to hear that stuff. So I thank you. So it's very interesting. So and talking about pickups, when preparing for this interview, I read just an interesting thing. I read the description that you have written somewhere about the Shawbucker, the pickup you designed for Fender. It's quite intriguing because the way you describe it is actually very much in line with how I think a musical sounding, like dual coil humbucking pickup kind of should be done. But I've never tried one of those Shawbuckers, so I should maybe put one of one of my personal guitars to try them out, because I'm kind of very interested in how that would work out.
Well, they're again, it was basically what I said. I think at the time was I knew what Seth had intended, which is not necessarily what Gibson ended up with.
Right.
So this was my take on what he probably would have done had he had the set of parts that I had at Fender.
Right.
Because at Gibson, obviously, we had some components, which I assembled in a more Seth-like, if you will, style.
Yeah.
So, again, I was fortunate to have a pretty good idea while I was working there, and I learned more later, pretty much what he thought he was doing. And then by the time I got there, in the early '80s, when I do the quote Tim Shaw humbuckers at Gibson, I knew how far, in English we call it spec drift.
Right.
In other words, I start out planning on doing this, things happen, people leave, stuff. But by the time you're done, it's like the telephone game where you tell 5 people something, you end up with something over here.
Yeah, exactly.
So part of my task at Gibson at that point in time was to drag that specification kicking and screaming,
right.
back, the time was 20 years.
Yeah. Wow, that's very fascinating. That's very fascinating. And to those of you, if there's like younger generation people that are listening, the guy who Tim is referring to, Seth, he's talking about Seth Lover. Google Seth Lover and who that guy was. A very important guy in the history of electric guitar pickups. So that's that. So can you tell us more about your work at Fender? I mean, you're the research development. You're doing all the goofy stuff, I think. No?
Yeah, this is there's a term, and again, another Americanized English term, which some of your listeners may never have heard of. It's called a skunk works. So the Lockheed Aircraft Company had a facility up north of Los Angeles in Palmdale out in the desert where they basically created aircraft like the SR-71 Blackbird. But everything they worked on was top secret, to the point where a lot of people in their own company had no idea what was going on. What we have here in Nashville is 4 people and about 3,600 square feet or 360 square meters. And it's a shop. We have CNCs, but we also have pin routers, and we can pretty much make spray booth. We can pretty much make anything we can think of in here.
Yeah.
So guitars like the Fender Acoustasonic series, most recently, were designed I mean, literally around a coffee table 3 feet from me at this point on the floor. We drew it up there, programmed it and built it, and then later transferred the technology. We've got a laser, we've got, 3D printers, so we can pretty much make anything we want. And a lot of the really less traditional, shall we say, Fender stuff in recent years, in one way or another, has started in here.
Right. So how do you, because
we have,
yeah, sorry.
Go.
Yeah, just one question that came to my mind from what you were explaining is that, okay, so you guys there, you have the freedom, because that what you guys are doing there, it actually doesn't sound like too far from what we're doing here. We're 5 people, we're often around our coffee table, drawing this and that, brainstorming things together, and then just go ahead and do it. But obviously the big picture is very different. So in your case, how does that translate? I mean, I would imagine that there must be quite some significant challenges in transcripting what your guys are doing to the mass production and to that kind of how does this logistics work with this stuff?
Well, I guess we can look at it from a technical and we can look at it from a political point of view.
Yeah, which I'd like to hear both.
Technically speaking. Okay, fair enough. I suspected as well that you might.
Yeah.
Okay, so from a technical point of view, we know Josh Hurst, whose desk is just right across the aisle here from me, has worked for Gibson, or worked for Fender. Actually, did work for Gibson before, after I got there. But he's worked for Fender for 16 years. He's one of our absolutely best 3D guitar designers.
Right.
And he worked in Corona for a long time. So Josh knows pretty much, as do I, what the factory's physically capable of doing. And if we show them this, it won't be a problem. If we show them that, maybe. So we have a basic working knowledge of what's physically possible. And it only makes good sense to at least start with a basic understanding of that, so you're not trying to just totally irritate people by saying, here's something and it's really cool and you'll never be able to make it. You don't win a lot of friends that way.
Yeah.
So for instance, on the Acoustasonic, and it's a perfect example, we prototyped all the guitars here. Then we had a team come out from Corona and we spent a week and we built, I think, 5 of them, in real time with the engineers who were going to program the machines in Corona. So we'd said, okay, here's an operation. We did this like this. And, Fred, the engineer, might say, well, that's a great idea. Or he'd say, oh, that's cool, but I've got this, so I can do it this way.
Right.
So it was a very collaborative thing. So basically, by the time they got it, they knew what we had intended, how we did it, and how it might be improved as they got into it. So this went really pretty seamlessly.
Yeah.
And this was a project, sliding into the kind of political aspect of things, a project like this had support from the top at the beginning.
Right.
So we all knew we were heading in a direction. They didn't know exactly what we were going to get, but everybody knew what we were doing.
Right.
There's a wall of guitars 3 meters from me right now that are orphans, that are cool ideas we had that will never see the light of day.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we'll do something here, and this, and you guys do the same thing, but it's a lot shorter path for you.
Yeah.
Where you get an idea, you try something, and then you show it to people, and people can either go, "Hey, that's a great idea," or they can say, "Oh, I don't know, how about that?" Or sometimes they'll go, "Dear God, no, not ever. Just stop." So we joke we've got some guitars there that, so sometimes it seems we have like a 7-year period for some guitar designs. So you'll do something and 7 years later, somebody might come back and say, "Hey, didn't you do something like that?" Yeah. Or they'll say, "Hey, you know what I really need? I need one of these." And then you can go, "Here, right here." So it can work a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I would guess also that times have changed a lot. I mean, the technical challenges that you guys faced maybe 20 years, 30 years ago are not there anymore because of the sophisticated high-end technology that you can use to kind of do fancier stuff, nicer detailing, whatever, with the modern technology, and still in the mass production environment.
Oh, completely true. There are things we can do, particularly for stuff like neck shapes,
Yeah.
where you can basically take a neck shape that somebody hand carved and reproduce it very, very accurately in a way that traditional tooling would not have allowed you to do as simply.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely true. CNC technology changed everything in that regard.
Yeah,
And
and I think
part
that
of what
this
we
is
do here is rapid.
yeah. Sorry,
No,
interrupting you all the time.
we can that's all right. And we can also rapid prototype to the point where I can do stuff with a 3D printer and a laser that would be production ready, relatively quickly. So the time between an idea and bringing something to market can also be a lot shorter because of all this technology.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just kind of, that this part, just wanted to say to people that this is one of those things that I find a very, very positive change in regard when I'm thinking, the cheap guitar, well, cheap mass produced. Okay, Fender does guitars in all price categories, but thinking of the, even the cheap guitars, mass produced guitars, what they used to be when I was a kid, and how difficult it was to find a good guitar with small budget, and nowadays you can find, and the kind of the level of mass produced instrument from the pretty low price point up, it is improved so much, and it's only a good thing because what else is better than have better guitars for those who start playing guitar, so.
Right. Well, Bill Schultz used to talk about seeding the market, was his term for it.
Right.
And if we don't get people who start guitar to continue it,
yeah,
then eventually none of us have jobs.
Yeah.
So it's really important, for those of us who work in a mass production environment,
yeah,
or who influence those instruments, to basically make even the entry level stuff as good as it can be. So that you're not fighting the instrument. At that point, if you want to express yourself, the instrument's not going to get in your way.
Yeah. That's right. That's very well put. And well, you play guitar. You've played guitar. You said you played guitar since 1963. So, do you have a personal favorite guitar type, an instrument you keep going back to over and over? Like, what is your go-to? Or not?
I think different guitars make us play different stuff, just fundamentally. There was a songwriter named Harlan Howard in Nashville who basically used a guitar until he couldn't think of anything else to write on it, and then he gave it away.
Yeah.
So basically, and you do the same thing I do in terms of what you build, you understand geometry. So basically, a flat instrument, you held up that telly a while ago, a flat instrument with a neck set like that sits against your body a certain way, it sounds a certain way, you play it a certain way, it makes you think of certain stuff. Yeah. A carved top or an arch top instrument with 4 degrees of neck angle, and a tunematic style bridge sits completely differently, feels differently, you think of different stuff.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I've got, I think, hanging in my office at home right now, I've got, it's like 5 guitars and 2 basses in there.
Yeah.
And it's all stuff, for the most part, that I either designed and built. There's a couple exceptions. And it really depends on what I'm in the mood for.
Yeah.
So I've got like a solid body nylon sting prototype if I want to play stuff like that. I've got a 12 fret acoustic. I have an Acoustasonic Tele. You know, I've got a regular Tele. So it's whatever, you know, I don't have a favorite because it really depends on what I'm in the mood for and what I want to express in terms of what I actually pick up.
Yeah. This is true, of course, to many players that, you know, like I'm saying often that there are different songs hiding in different instruments. You know, just you pick that instrument and then different music comes out than from the next guitar. So of course, yeah, that's the way it is. Now, talking about, you know, you have that kind of big picture, working for Gibson, working for Fender for such a very long period of time, and you've seen different times. So now, despite the fact the vast spectrum of, you know, what the electric guitar can be in our modern times, in its, you know, endless forms and styles, the kind of like the renaissance we're living, if you look at all the handmade stuff and everything that is available in all sorts of, it's kind of, you know, mind-blowing. But there's still a lot of straight out, you know, replicas, copies, clones made of the iconic Fender designs. So what's Fenders, what's your take on that?
Well, I think, you know, this could be looked at in a couple of different ways. You know, we'll keep the legal aspects out of it.
Yeah.
Because I think they're less important to our discussion.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are legal aspects.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. This is clear. Yeah.
I think as a builder, it's as if you taught yourself to paint in oils, and all you wanted to do was the upper left-hand corner of Van Gogh's Starry Night. That's the only thing you ever wanted to paint, but you wanted to do that over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, basically, you know, if I want to see what something sounds like, then I can build something and go, okay, now I know how that works, or I've just made myself one of these. You know, I'm not going to buy a Gibson J45 for $5,000 now when I could have, you know. So if I want something like that, I'll just build myself one.
Yeah.
If a guy or a person wants to do nothing but copies, part of me looks at him and says, "Is that the best you got?"
Yeah.
No, really. You know, you've got all these mechanical skills.
Yeah.
You know, and you're going to say, "Okay, August 14th, 1962, here it is, and it was scratched right there, so I scratched mine there too." You know, it's like, oh, come on, you can do better than this.
Yeah, I know. I asked this question kind of like, you know, with the I kind of had the idea where, you know, what you might say to it, and I have to say I agree. Looking at it from the other side, in a way, from the other side of the fence, being one of the small guys, and recognizing that there still is that kind of middle ground, gray area where you know, there's a lot of builders that feel that, you know, that's how they can make a living. It's kind of like repairing guitars or making replicas of these things with a different logo, you know, put to the headstock. But I think it's also like, this used to be, again, going back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was like it was a given. It was like most builders would make replicas, and it was quite unusual that there's builder who has something like an electric guitars making something different. So in that way, we have come quite far from those days, and it's more and more kind of recognized, I think, on our side of the fence as well, that it's kind of lame to just do that same thing over and over, and kind of more, you know, that if somebody very much, if, you know, because I get this, I mean, I get sometimes, I still, after 25 years making our stuff, still sometimes there might come that guy and say that, well, could you make me that Strat copy, because you're making so great guitars, but I would really, and so I, you know, and then I'm kind of in the position to convince the person that, look, if you really want a Fender Strat, then why don't you buy a Fender Strat? You know, buy a good Fender Strat and bring it to me if it's not in great shape. You know, we can fix it. we can tweak it, whatever, whatnot. So I, I think we're on a kind of a similar
No,
thinking.
I think we are. I think.
Yeah.
No, I think very much so. I think, a lot of production stuff 25 years ago, wasn't necessarily at the same quality levels, just, like broadly speaking.
Yeah.
Also because of the CNC technology and the advances in in guitar building. Some of those, I'd like that, but like that, with this in it. Well, something like that might actually exist, speaking just Fenders, in our world where it might not have existed 25 or 30 years ago. So a guy could have said, well, I have to make a living making these because you guys won't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff where we actually might. But just to kind of tie into a thing you said a minute ago, I was thinking like you and our good friend John Page, perfect examples. You both, so guitars are systems, and as systems, all this geometry, all these little variables, all these mechanical and electrical parts matter. Some matter more than others. And it's our task as designers to basically say, okay, in this case, this doesn't matter, but that really does.
Yeah.
But you and John are perfect examples of this. You both understand the systems. You both speak the language. You both know the vocabulary. You both have consummate skills. And each of you has basically said, okay, I'm going to bolt in a neck, but I'm going to do it like this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this and that. So you're basically saying, I understand this. It's like a musician or a composer getting basic skills, or an artist, just go back to the other analogy. Okay, now I've got all these basic skills. Now I can choose what I want to include, choose what I don't include. Yeah. So, your arch-topped single cutaway thing at 15 meters looks like another arch-top single cutaway thing when in fact it's substantially different.
Yeah.
John's single cutaway flat 2 pickup thing looks like another thing, but it is rather a different beast.
Yeah.
But again, you guys have taken the time. You are masters, and you've developed a skill set that allows you to say, okay, I get this. I don't need to go there.
Yeah.
Because I want to go here.
Yeah. Now we got a question. Bring it up here. We kind of already talked about this a bit, but JW is asking, you think the quality improved during the last decade? Well, I'm gonna just say that first of all that because we talked about how the quality has developed and kind of tying into the you kind of brushed on that angle as well, but the fact that there was a time in the 70s, in the 80s where I feel like, frankly speaking, there's the feeling that there was a time in the history of electric guitar manufacturing where the big manufacturers weren't that great in listening to the customer, and that kind of and there was a kind of a dip in the quality as well, enough so that it kind of generated the need for what became later to known as the boutique guitar scene that has kind of grown into these overwhelming proportions today. And so
I would completely agree with that.
Yeah. And now again, like JW is saying, do you think the quality improved during the last decade? Do you have how do you feel like short, on short span last decade? Is it climbing the ladder like year by year by year, or how do you feel?
I think basically, in general, yes, it's continually improving. The quality of mass-produced guitars, most of them from Asia, has drastically improved what we can expect out of the factories when we order something or when we design something and have it built. Because basically, we are not just going in and saying, "Oh, make us number 14 in red, please." We're actually providing a lot of input there.
Yeah.
I think the quality has continued to improve. The bar continues to go up. And this is a good thing for everybody, again, because I really firmly believe, and I know you do, that music is an awesome civilizing, for lack of a better term, thing in our world.
Yeah.
And the better this stuff is way down low, the more people are going to get into it.
Yeah.
And I just think that's fundamentally a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
amen to that,
JW. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, okay, so let's talk a little bit about, because it looks like we're kind of like, because you're there at the research development, you kind of told about the nature of your work, and I'm talking about mine. It almost sounds like in some ways that we're the same, and we're just patting each other's backs here. But I just I just want to kind of, because you wrote, or actually, well, I don't know if you wrote it, or is it like is somebody else written this article, but you came up with this from GAL, the Guild of American Luthiers convention lecture you did in 1986. And in this article, you introduce a term I was not familiar with before. It's an excellent article. Too bad that it's not available like easily for public to read, because I think it's just excellent reading. I don't know if I would get, I don't know, maybe I will ask Tim from GAL if this could be shown, or I don't know, but to our viewers. But in any case, you introduced the term the white-collar luthier as a kind of a differentiating term for the independent luthier that I represent, and a person like you, a luthier who's working for a big corporation. So you would be the white-collar luthier. And what do you mean by this term?
At this point in time.
Yeah.
I think basically this is a guy who understands instruments well enough to do them on his or her own. Say person then, because back then it was almost exclusively guys, and now obviously it's far more diversified.
Yeah.
But a luthier who works in a factory context. So this is a person who is perfectly capable of building one of pretty much anything, not necessarily everything. I'm not a very good archtop maker, for instance, but some other things I could do okay. So I could do the stuff by myself. I choose to do it in the context of this larger company.
Yeah.
And as such, I have freedoms. I also have responsibilities, and I have constraints. And that was the white-collar luthier thing is based on a lecture I did at the Guild of American Luthiers in 1986. The article you're talking about, they still publish a thing called the Big Red Book of Luthery.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's volume 2. And that's still available. The GAL still has that. They don't have all this stuff online at this point, but it is actually available as part of a book. That book right there.
There you go. Good. Let's advertise a little bit. Yeah, so go buy that book, so you'll get to read this article.
Yeah, it does exist. It does exist, and that's where it is.
Yeah, yeah. So this is
no.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because sometimes, and it's the nature of our connection, that sometimes there's latency, and you're still talking, and I've seen that you've stopped. No, but I think the whole point of this is that in my context, yes, I could build anything, but if it doesn't serve a purpose or answer a question, I could be frustrated in the sense of self-expression if I build something and nobody wants it.
Yeah.
If you come up with something on your own, you have the freedom to say, okay, basically this is cool and it may be a really niche product, but I'm going to make it anyway.
Yeah, like my valve buckers. That would be like
yeah, I think the valve buckers, it's a perfect example.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a really neat idea. Are you going to sell 4 million of them? No,
absolutely not.
Was it still worth doing? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference.
Yeah, because we in Finland, we're so stubborn. We're that's why.
you know, so I think basically you can, and one of the points I made in, in the lecture was that you as an individual luthier can create, those, like the art shop you did a few years ago. I think they went to the Holy Grail show, the art shop with all, uh, was it Emma? I forget what you actually named it, but that was the one art shop guitar you
Yeah, Emma Maria, yeah.
yeah. Emma Maria. Okay. That's a clear cut example of a vision. You had a vision, you executed that vision.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah,
I salute you for it.
Thank you.
On the other hand, if you're very welcome. But on the other hand, I might end up having a hand in making something that ends up being 100,000 pretty good guitars.
Yeah.
Well, 100,000 pretty good guitars, it's not, standing on the mountain pointing across the valley, but it's not nothing.
Yeah, it's
a
pretty cool thing. It's a pretty cool thing as well.
In its own little.
Yeah.
But that was the point. So the white collar luthier actually gets to do stuff where, down the road, it matters to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So again, that was the thrust of the article.
Yeah, that's right. And so people, if you want to know more about this stuff, there's the book. Tim showed it to you. But we're going to move on. So I often come across to people claiming on forums and other medias that the electric guitar is kind of it's done, it's ready. Nothing new, significant, world-shattering has come out since 1950s. Okay, well, some stuff maybe in the 80s, but at the same time, we're seeing now a growing trend in people starting to play guitar more and more. New York Times wrote a piece called "The Guitarist Back Baby" a week ago, or something like that. And one repeated notion in these news from recent years, including the study done by you guys, by Fender. Your CEO Andy Mooney was talking about it on some interview online, that there are now more women starting to play guitar than ever. The 50, even was it 50% of the new guitar buyers would be women. So now in that light, does this mean that guitar as we know it might continue to evolve as well, because the demographics change, the generation changed, even the ruling gender looks to be changing? So I think that's a pretty fascinating angle to it, that maybe guitar is not ready at all.
No, I think first off, it is a much broader demographic, both in terms of gender, but in terms of culture, so basically at this point, you could, if you wanted to, go after this thing, go onto YouTube and find a whole bunch of Berber rock, North African rock music if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't have done that 40 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe could have found a record store. But the point is, we are deeper and broader than we have ever been.
Yeah, absolutely agreed.
Just in your comment, roll back 5 or 10 minutes to your comment about Seth Lover, who's a guy, I knew the guy. But now you've got an entire generation where they're going to go, Seth who?
Yeah.
This generation does not necessarily, while it can build on or take from not only the music but the instruments of the past, it's not necessarily this, new players are not necessarily beholden to those things.
Yeah.
They're tools.
Yeah.
So I think as we are influenced by all this, I think, guitar design is by no means dead. There's some tremendously cool stuff out there, which is not as mainstream, but which is still really intriguing stuff.
Yeah.
I think, no, it's absolutely manifestly not dead. There's just a lot of really cool stuff to do.
Yeah.
One point that I'd make here is that guitars are tools and dreams. They have to give us the sound we want at the volume we have to play at, and we have to want to play them.
Yeah.
And if we don't want to play them, they're decorative wall hangings.
Can you repeat those three things for the people?
Guitar,
important.
Okay. A musical instrument has to give you the sound you want at the volume you have to play it at, and you have to want to play it.
Amen to that, people. There is a piece of wisdom that we will all, cherish and remember, because that's the way it is. And if you think of, there's a very beautiful arch, all the way, the circle closing to the beginning of the electric guitar. The electric guitar, why was it invented? So that people could be heard, so that the guitarist could be heard in the band better. You want to be heard. So there's one of those, and two others. It's beautiful. So that's good. So last but not least, would you have any advice for people on the lookout for a new guitar? Something.
I think basically, no, well, it's, I think one of the things, as I was saying this other thing, it's like people are hearing new music, people are also creating new music, and having this much broader human palette of musicians means that people are going to use an existing product in different ways. And that's just really cool to watch, and to hear. So basically, people, I think music stores are still valid in the sense that you can still go down and play something and hear 3 or 4 different things. So a lot of stuff while you can do it online, there's no substitute for sitting down, playing a bunch of stuff and seeing what speaks to you. Because what speaks to you now may not speak to you as much 5 years from now, or it may become, like a Stevie Ray or a B.B. King. There's an instrument with whom they were with which they were associated, and that's what they played. And I heard B.B. King play a Gibson Dove once, and he still sounded exactly like B.B. King. But younger people going out and playing stuff, it's like, try a bunch of stuff, see what speaks to you, and then go do something cool with it.
Simple as that. Simple as that.
It is as simple as that at some level.
Yeah.
Because I meet a lot of young players. I'll go to an amp show and watch people playing at booths or whatever, and I'll go, really, you're doing that? And it's really, and it's interesting for me, particularly with the Acoustasonic. When we launched that guitar in the California Amp Show 2 years ago, we had a little stage set up with like 3 or 4 guitars and amps, and there were a lot of people playing the guitar, and many times in a space 3 meters wide and a meter deep, you had 3 completely different musical styles going simultaneously. Because everybody was playing something different on it. Well, and again, back to our different instruments make us play different stuff. But just watching what people were doing with that, as one of the guys who worked on it, I'm going, really? You're what? Okay. But there's so much cool stuff to be done. We are not done hearing this stuff. We are not done making this stuff. And it's a really, really exciting time to be in our business.
I totally agree. It's in many ways, it's like, well, I've been in this 25 years, and I'm, and I feel there's this, well, despite not talking about the times we live in right now with the crisis and all this stuff, but rather more, in general of the, as you were describing it, like the musical world are kind of like expanding to every direction. It's like more of everything, more than ever of everything available. And you can just pick your whatever it is, you want to kind of dive into, style of music and stuff, There's always going to be that channel somewhere online where you can find like-minded people sharing that passion for that style of music. And so it's very fascinating. And well, I have here one more question. We're kind of running out of time soon, but JW asks, first I'm going to say Kingsley Durant, as always, a guitar is only as good as the time you put into it. That is very well said. I believe this comes from Steve Kimmock, I think. But we're gonna take this question now here. JW, at the end of the at the end, the difference between large companies and luthiers. Wait a minute. Maybe this is a politically incorrect question. Let's see if it is. But at the end, the difference between large companies and luthiers is the degrees of freedom customers have to define their instrument more than the different build quality. How do you understand this question?
I think it kind of depends. There's a famous building in San Francisco called the Transamerica Pyramid, which is a very, very tall, very, very pointy building.
Right.
Okay. So if we want to look at price going up from the first floor to the 100 and whatever it is floor.
Yeah.
You know, the higher you get, the narrower this thing is, the fewer offices are on that floor or whatever. So if you are a player who has the wherewithal to go to an individual builder and say, make me this, then you can get that, you know, that particular need realized very, very well. And there's absolutely a place for that.
Yeah.
If you're down on the 14th floor and you've got €400 and that's it, well, you can get something that's, you know, across a wide variety of ranges and styles that will actualize a good bit of what you're hearing in your head.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, it's the function of the factory at that point to make a lot of really decent things.
Yeah.
And it's the function of the individual luthier, for those who can afford it, to basically actualize a single thought, whether it's the luthier's thought or the player's thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. And I, quoting John Page from our earlier interview when he said, about, that let's not fool ourselves, us the luthiers, us the small guys. It's the majority, 99 point something percent of the volume of the instruments that is out there, and all the the legendary music ever recorded, played live, whatever. It's done with mass-produced, factory-made guitars. And what we, the luthiers, were catering for a very niche audience, specific audience. So I think it's all, we're part of that, part of that spectrum, and all is good, and every part of it is needed. Because, I mean, if my job wasn't being needed, I couldn't run this business. I wouldn't have work to do. So that justifies my existence in doing what I do. There's a need for what I do. There's a need for what you guys do. There's a need for anybody who can make a living. What is mind-boggling to me sometimes is the like I mentioned, the overwhelming amount of small builders nowadays, like probably tens of thousands. What is mind-boggling to me is that how does this work? Where do all these guitars go? And how do all these people make their living in these days, when it looked so very, very different like 30 years ago, 20 years ago even. So in that regard, the world has changed. But I think it's of course it's explainable with the way the world has changed, like we were discussing about the globalization and everything being at our fingertips. And we can find all the information, we can find all the music we ever want, and so, yeah. So we're kind of running nearly over time, but Tim, do you have a few more minutes? In case we can,
I do.
If we could unveil together the long-kept secret of how we know each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the first time we met was at NAMM. It was NAMM 2006, I'm quite confident. And, my buddy and I, we came upstairs to the Fender business area, meeting area, whatever it was called there. Not at the regular floor, exhibition floor, but it was there somewhere. And we looked out for someone from the R&D. And we were pointed at, you. And so we have this invention with us. Do you remember anything of this?
I vaguely remember the meeting. Obviously, I remember what happened afterwards.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So we had,
anyways, we initial conversation. I don't.
Yeah. So we had this invention with us. I can't even recall if we had the thing with us there yet, but it was anyways in the making, and we had been advised, by our patent lawyer not to tell any specifics of our invention before we get a non-disclosure agreement signed. And I don't know how unusual this was for you guys, but from our side, we were rookies. We had absolutely no idea how those things worked on general, and in any case, we ended up getting that piece of paper signed by you or by Chuck Adams. I can't quite recall, someone else high up at Fender, and you guys were intrigued enough to invite us to demonstrate what we had to the Fender headquarters in Scottsdale, Arizona. So we were thrilled, obviously, because from what we understood, a very small percentage of ideas coming from outside Fender R&D ever got that far, that being invited to the lion's den. but you're located in Nashville, and I remember before we flew to Arizona, we visited your Fender R&D lab in Nashville, and when we entered the door, I remember you said to me, "Now, I can't take you through that door, because if you could see what's being developed there, I'd have to kill you."
Yeah, we're a little looser about it now, but that was the gist of it at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, and so we had in Nashville, we had the best pulled pork ever, like my friend Mika remembers very well, and so then we flew to Scottsdale. This was already in 2007. So first time we met 2006. So 2007, we flew from Nashville to Scottsdale and had a demonstration meeting with a bunch of Fender people. Chuck Adams was there for sure, and other people from R&D and also from marketing were there at the Fender headquarters. I'm going to show you a picture. There we are. There's my former business partner, Mika Koskinen, is there, leaning to the wall, and Chuck Adams is there. I'm there, and then we had our tech guy, kind of escapes. I haven't worked with him in 15 years. I can't remember the guy's name. Anyways, sorry about that. I'm gonna put away the picture. That was at the lobby at the Fender headquarters. I know people are dying to know what that invention was, so I'll show you. So I recall we had named this thing the virtual vibrato, right? So this is a guitar. It's a weird thing with two whammy bars. I can explain to you in a little while what it is. Basically what it is. The invention. It is a sensor and a digital circuit that replaced the conventional whammy in a guitar. So it doesn't do. Here is the sensor here, right there. So it doesn't do anything unplugged, obviously. But amplified, it was pretty convincing, and with remarkably low latency of less than 4 milliseconds. It was like those days, this was outstanding. And anyways, you could bend chords in tune, you could determine how deep dives it did and in what curve. But it was so much, ahead of its curve back in those days. It needed a hexaphonic signal to trigger the effect. So it could have been embedded at that time to those of you in the know, what Fender VG Stratocaster is. Well, Line 6 Variax is more common. It could have been embedded to that, or the Gibson Robot Les Paul. So quite limited use at the time, and we never got far enough to miniaturize the circuit, which means that in addition to this guitar, you needed something else. Yeah. So there, so there you see, I'm sitting there at the Scottsdale Fender headquarters, one of the demo rooms, and that 8-unit rack that I'm there doing something with, that's the circuit. So we hadn't miniaturized it, any of it. So we were told with our cooperative partners that we were working this thing together with, that it could have been miniaturized, but anyway, so we never got that far. I'll explain why, because we needed an investor to take that leap from this monster prototype to the miniaturized thing where the circuit is embedded into the guitar. And so we took our hats off and walked to Fender and to these others. We showed it to Line 6, we showed it to Gibson, we showed it to Larry Fishman for some reason, maybe to Roland as well, I can't remember, maybe those others. And we really got pretty far with Fender and things looked good. But then, because this happened in 2007 summer, and by the time we had kind of taken those next steps that we were asked to do by you guys, the global financial crisis hit in 2008, and the dollar crashed, and I got a note from Chuck saying that unfortunately Fender pulls out from this type of project due to the changed circumstances. Now maybe this was part of the truth. I have no idea what was the truth, but in any case, very long and winding story cut short, we were left with a fully functioning prototype that I still have here in wraps. Couldn't get another investor, and for us as a little tiny company, the R&D, it was just out of our league. So we buried it. Can't win every time. So that's how we came to kind of ties us together, and it kind of brings another memory, which is to me even more bizarre. A few years later, you visited Finland. You remember this?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
And this was at a seminar about sustainable tone wood and kind of replacing substitute materials for the
Right.
It was talk about composite materials and thermal treatment and stuff like that. So these guys from Flaxwood Guitars, they flew you from Nashville. They had Mike Dickinson from Martin R&D.
Mark.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And other people. And yeah, we were flown to the eastern Finland, to the absolutely middle of nowhere, Joensuu. Finnish people know where Joensuu is. So the weirdest place of all places in Finland. We were flown to Joensuu, and we were having there a panel discussion. You were there, I was there, Martin Guitars was there. It was just, that was the most bizarre ever that I will never forget. Yeah.
Well, it was bizarre. It was a lot of fun, but it just shows again how small our world is.
Yeah.
And how, I have a lot of friends in the music industry that I've known over 40 years. And a lot of us, those of us who are kind of lifers in this business,
yeah,
keep connecting. Okay, well, yeah, I used to work with this guy and now he's doing this and I work with that guy. So all of this is incredibly interwoven.
Yeah.
And for the most part, very gracious and friendly. Those of us who are at these levels, everybody does know everybody.
Yeah.
If I don't know something and it's not a trade secret, I can call so-and-so up and say, hey, I'm thinking this.
Yeah.
And get an answer out of it. Again, corporate and political considerations being what they are, it doesn't work quite as easily as it might have 30 years ago. But having said that, everybody does know everybody.
Yeah, I can
And
I
that's
can
a really kind
attest
of
to
cool
that.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, I can totally attest to that, and and which is also to me like representing the younger generation and one of the small guys and still, but I have that same feeling, and and it really, like I've said in some other broadcasts, that this maybe a romantic idea, but it's still, I have to say that to me, I always, one of the things that I enjoy most in working in this field of business is that it feels like you know the majority of people, whether it's big companies, small companies, the people that are actually the people dealing with the guitars, dealing with the passionate people there, it's the same. Yeah, we share the same passion, and it's good people. It's a good bunch of people, like a
Very much.
tribe of people.
No,
And
it very much is.
yeah,
Very much is.
so that's feel very fortunate about that. And okay, so now we have revealed the dark, top secret Fender slash Ruokangas R&D story that didn't go end too happily, but you can't always win. And we learned, and I think what differentiates those of us that in the end succeed or not is that the ones who you fall, you get up again. You fall, you get up again. You might fall a lot of times, you get up again, and you continue, and it will come. So that's one of those kind of things for people to remember out of our failure with the virtual vibrato. And I think,
Well, I mean, we all have. Yeah,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to say, those of us, it's true. I mean, I have boxes full of ideas
Yeah,
that didn't work, um, boxes of ideas that various marketing regimes of various companies at various times said, "Oh, I don't think so."
yeah,
Um, but you don't give up. I've got stuff, you know, a meter and a half from me is a pickup design that nobody's ever heard,
yeah,
including me.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the way. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. You just kind of keep forging, and some of those things will go through.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So hey, Tim, it's been a blast, and thank you so much. I hope our viewers have enjoyed even half as much as I have. It's really
Oh,
it's been a great
well, thanks for
privilege.
having me, man. This has been great.
Yeah, yeah.
No, this has been great. I've really enjoyed it,
I'm glad to
and
hear. Glad to hear. And
let's
and all the
let's
best.
let's continue hanging.
Yeah, absolutely. And
You as well, man.
yeah, and stay safe. Until next time,
You too.
somewhere, sometime. Can't say right
Exactly.
now
And
where.
event and a
When.
venue to be disclosed later.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. One of
exactly. And a
those.
venue to be disclosed later.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing we talked about earlier yesterday when we tested our connection a bit is that I have never ever done a summer NAM in Nashville. So there is one thing to do, and one opportunity one of these years, to hang out again.
Absolutely.
So
Jackson's still downtown, so
yeah,
basically the barbecue is still there.
yeah,
Pulled
yeah,
pork is good. The tri-tip is great.
yeah. Great, great. So thank you again, and all the best to you and your family and the business and your R&D lab and everybody. So take care.
You as well, man. Take
Yeah,
care.
take care.
Be well.
Bye bye. Bye.
All right. You too. Bye bye.
Okay, what can I say, people? What's happening here? This is not supposed to happen. Wait a minute. Now something funny is going on. Okay, now we're back. Now we're back looking as it's supposed to look. What can I say? After every interview, I feel not only humble, but a little bit more educated than before. And, that is always a great thing. Educating yourself about all possible things in life is a good thing. Remember that. It's at the very core of what a human being is about as a creature. We're here to understand better so that we can be better to each other, Yep. Team Shaw, am I or am I not in a privileged, gifted position in getting to interview these wonderful people? I am, yes, happy and privileged. So it's 5 interviews behind, and I have two more of these Factory versus Luthier episodes coming up. And you know what? I have interviewed now both sides of the fence. The small guys, some who have done both, and now even the biggest one of them all, Fender, and the big bad boys. But, we're all, my interviewees and myself, we have to admit it, we're all middle-aged or older men. Where is the next generation? Where's the young, the innovative, the future in the continuum of making inspirational instruments for musicians? There's a problem we have to fix next week and talk to a future generation god of fretted instruments. Except that when I phrased it that way to my wife, Emma, earlier today, her first comment was, why only gods? Where are all the equally important goddesses of fretted instruments? No. Point taken. True, very true. So, next week, I will be interviewing one of the future hopes of guitar making. Let me take you a picture here. No, not that one. That was the virtual vibrato. Sorry about that. There you go. I will be interviewing Rosie Heidenreich, the hard-working young luthier behind Turnstone Guitars located in Surrey, England. Now, Rosie makes steel-stringed acoustic guitars, and she founded her company in 2015. And during this relatively short period of time, Turnstone guitars have gained quite a bit of attention, from players around the world. And I am quite intrigued to ask Rosie if her work representing the younger generation of handmade guitar, whether her work show in the, if in the demographics of players who own her guitars, are they younger as well? And are there more women among her customers? Now, it shouldn't obviously matter, or, her gender as a builder should be irrelevant in every imaginable way. But in this world, in the reality we live in, I have a feeling that it still might change things for her work. Even if there are world-famous successful female luthiers, Linda Manser as the shining star, a role model for all of us. But yeah, so I'm very curious to hear Rosie's take on this topic, and I'm also aware that despite of running a very small operation, Rosie has an interest towards modern technologies such as CNC. So this may also tie in an interesting way to our topic of factory versus luthier, or serial produced versus one instrument made at a time. Maybe. I don't know. Very, very interesting change of perspective coming up next week, so stay tuned. And now please share on your social media channels hit the like button, hit the dislike button if you didn't like. Leave your comments below, please. If you already haven't, remember to hit that subscribe button, and there is that little bell icon next to it. Hit that one too, so you'll be notified about the next video, because you don't want to miss it, right? The more the merrier. Watching the actual live stream, the cooler. And for those of you who missed the live, it's going to be there on YouTube. It's going to be available as a podcast. This episode will come available next Wednesday to our podcast platform. So it's going to be there as well. So yeah. Thank you so much. That's it. Take care. Look after your loved ones, and peace, love, and good music. Good day, good night, wherever in the time zone you are. Stay tuned. Weekly Wednesday Live.